harmful way of breathing is being promoted today in order to regain your well-being. And it has been for a long time. Yet, in the words of Vladimir Sukhonosov, Buteyko practitioner of 40 years, Professor Buteyko couldn't find a single article or scientific study not just stating the benefits of this way of breathing, but simply stating that it is not harmful. Because deep breathing in the form of chronic hyperventilation is actually at the core of all chronic diseases. Welcome to our 5th episode of the Learn Buteyko podcast, a birth into shallow breathing. We shall continue our conversation on birth and the role of parents in the future breathing of their children, taking you back to the life cycle from the Buteyko perspective. Today, we have again with us the most experienced group of practitioners of the Buteyko method anywhere in the world. Vladimir, Christopher, Martha, Marcel, Irini, Nicolas, join us today with you, of course, who will be asking those questions that you might have about the Buteyko method. This podcast could mark the beginning of a journey to a level of health you might have thought to be lost within you, and yet it is available as a function of the way you breathe. I am sure that you are going to find this episode of great interest. Welcome to this new episode of the Learn Buteyko podcast. Today we are taking you further up the life cycle from the Buteyko perspective, picking up on what the method can do for expectant mothers and children, and we will keep giving you the context in which the Buteyko method must operate in order to be effective. That means we are going to talk about fundamental concepts of the method and also the medical and societal context in which we have to operate from the Buteyko perspective. So Hugh, you have some questions prepared for Vladimir because we need to address something very important. Why is deep breathing, especially through the mouth, so corrosive for our health? What was actually the research behind it? Because Buteyko himself couldn't find any articles at all justifying deep breathing.
Vladimir, before meeting Professor Buteyko, I understand you were a deep breather and a mouth breather. How did you overcome this to improve your health?
Why were you motivated to do it? Because I think you watched Alexander Stalmatsky first go through it.
Yeah, it's correct. I can tell a story about Stalmatsky. Stalmatsky, we heard Professor Buteyko lectures. He made lots of popular lectures. It looked strange for us because everything was upside down. And Stalmatsky came to his house first. And Buteyko, first word of Professor Buteyko was, "Are you idiot?" Stalmatsky asked, "Why you think like that?" Because Buteyko said, "You're breathing through your mouth." And Stalmatsky, didn't expose any reaction. He asked, "How I supposed to breathe?" And Buteyko said, come over, right? And then Stalmatsky had many health problems, including blood cancer, TB, and severe asthma. And his health was improved shortly. That's why it made a very big effect on me, like explosion of some bomb.
Do you remember when Stalmatsky made the video and he said, they sent me to the hospital for tropical diseases. I've never been to the tropics. And then they said,
of course,
you should go to the Ukraine because the climate is better. And then when in the Ukraine, they said, oh, you better go to Siberia. The climate is better for you.
Yeah, dry air. Buteyko, lived in Siberia, right? Because Salmatsky heard about some Buteyko practitioner in Ukraine. She was doctor, retired doctor, and she kept doing Buteyko practice. But when she realized Salmatsky came from city where Buteyko lived, she asked him, "Why you came to me? You, Professor Buteyko, beside you. Go and visit him, all right?" Yes, and Stalmatsky, remember, Christopher, you made video, right? With Stalmatsky, and he said, when I had first effect, when I improved my health, I told my friends, my enemies, friends of enemies, enemies of friends, like this. He told it to everyone. That's why of course, I heard about Buteyko ideas, but when I saw big improvement on Stalmatsky health, of course. For me, again, it's the same questions like you mentioned already. What connection with heart attack and breathing, right? Because most of people don't understand. You can see if somebody has heart attack, breathing is getting so heavy, so deep, okay? Easy to see. That's why breathing is connecting with many disorders, like 200 modern disorders.
Anaphylactic shock, the breathing's going haywire.
Yeah.
Anxiety, panic attack, breathing's going haywire.
It's again, please, okay, we can say deep breathing is such a habit, bad habit. And what Buteyko said, okay, maybe you can choose what Buteyko said, okay, this idea of deep breathing, there is no single articles behind that. We could say deep breathing is good or not bad, at least, okay. Buteyko introduced deep breathing test. It's about accumulative effect. And when we ran workshop face-to-face, because we can control people better, it's nearly impossible. And we asked people to breathe deeply, do chest breathing in shortly, in 30 seconds, in 1 minute. See, all symptoms, chronic symptoms, were exacerbated, right?
But we can't do that anymore. If you've got, because back those Soviet days, the people have control pause 25, 30, 22, maybe some have low control pauses. But if your room is full of people with 9 seconds, 12 seconds, 10 seconds, and you do deep breathing tests, maybe somebody will collapse there.
Yes, that's why I could see if some bad situation coming, right? I could say stop
them.
this
Yeah,
test,
yeah,
stop
yeah.
it.
But
Of
others
course.
will stop as well then.
No, people understood, what to my knowledge, okay, to my experience, because it is acute hyperventilation test, all right, and people could see difference. They develop palpitation, dizziness, etc. All chronic symptoms aggravated, all right, or it was obvious for many people, for most of people, right?
I did a deep breathing test in the Hale Clinic one time, and some guy in the back of the room, he began to cough after, and I thought he's gonna die, right? Okay,
Yeah,
because he cough and cough and cough, and very hard to stop him from coughing when he doesn't know the method and you know.
Why I should mention this test, okay, just to provide some thought, all right, because it is acute hyperventilation and people can see effect or bad impact, they can see. But if people breathe a bit deeper than normal physiological norm, day by day, constantly, they get accumulative effect. Result should be same. Of course, it should take longer time, but result will be the same. What I'm talking about, okay? I just to try to point.
Very, very useful. As you can see, we are trying to be very, very thorough, get to the scientific points that that Buteyko was trying to make. But the key point is to do the practice and see the good effects that the method can have in your health. Let's go back to our cycle of life. Hugh, I think Martha and Eirini, Marcel as well, wanted to talk about birth and childhood. And let's see what they have for us today.
Well, our last podcast, number 3, was entitled Healthy Breathing for a Healthy Family. And it would be helpful if Irene and Martha would each talk about how an expectant mother who has successfully been practicing the Buteyko method will benefit when it comes to giving birth to her child. Irene.
Yes. If a mother has the big luck to be introduced to the method before giving birth, she will be really well prepared for what's coming. The pregnancy itself, and also the birth and the breastfeeding, and all the huge amounts of energy that the child needs until he or she becomes 3 years old, are almost unbearable to be delivered if someone does not have a big tool to access their own energy. It's a real treasure for a mother-to-be to hold this tool in her hand. The option and the tool to access her own strength, to be able to rest in just a few minutes. These are invaluable things in the everyday life of a mother-to-be and of a mother. Me, myself, I learned the method when my third child was born, and I was really exhausted. I was breastfeeding by eating too much, so I was getting fatter and fatter in order to find some energy to do that, plus to sustain the taking care of the bigger children, the older children. And it was really amazing that after I found the method and started practicing, I had all the energy I needed to be really a good mother, because I wanted to be a good mother, but I didn't. I didn't have the resources to be. I was exhausted all the time. Involves also waking up at night several times. I mean, it brings you really in the limit of your existence and of your power. And it was like a lifeboat, stirred sea. Somehow I was saved. That's what I felt as a mother, and I could be the best I could be for them and for myself, to be sustained during this process. So it's a big luck, a great treasure for a mother. And I think as a doctor, it's necessary for someone to be prepared and to know how to take care of a mother, to take care of her health before she gives birth, because as Vladimir correctly said, nature gives priority to the baby, because nature is focused on life moving forward. So the mother is one generation behind. So everything is focused on the baby. The baby has the perfect environment, the perfect nutrients. Everything is perfect for the baby. But if the mother is not abundant in all the resources the baby needs, she will be depleted of them in order for the baby to be perfect. So we see facts like women lost or decalcified or having problems afterwards with anemia, or we see them like they're emptying themselves from energy after giving birth. And we should see the opposite, being more enriched due to the relationship of the mother with the baby. I think this is the natural way. A baby is born and a mother is even more enriched from this relationship, from this giving. It's not that she has to give from what she does not have. So she's rich and she gives forward to life. Yes, that's it.
So there's an abundant natural energy resource from reducing the breathing.
Yes.
Well, in my case, I'm more of somebody who goes in for risk assessment. I trained as a science teacher, so I was in a classroom with a bunch of kids with Bunsen burners, so I was interested in risk assessment. And when I was giving birth myself, I was very, very wary of the whole process, because I was trying to avoid any complications from the birth. And my experience was that the birth was very slow. And that's what I'm seeing, is more and more women are having slower and slower births. And they go, instead of a number of hours to give birth, it's going into days. And that's because of the dilatory effect of carbon dioxide. The lower the level of carbon dioxide, the less likely your cervix is going to dilate, and the whole apparatus down below is going to expand and allow the baby to come out. It's a kind of constipation. And I'm hearing more and more that women are having to have cesareans, or they're hemorrhaging, and there's all kinds of complications. The incidence of birth complications is on the increase. Now, if you go back generations, my grandmother's sisters lived very close to each other. They had 8 children each, and they just ran across the hill to each other and helped them give birth in the middle of nowhere. And there weren't any complications. I'm not saying there weren't back in the 1800s, but you know, women were stronger. They were able to just deliver. And as the generations have gone on, it's become more and more difficult to give birth. And there seems to be a relationship with the level of carbon dioxide. That's what I can see. And the thing of tissue tearing, the quality of skin decreases with the level of carbon dioxide decreasing as well. You can see that stretch marks are more prevalent.
I mean, it's very sad to say, but we have to face the reality. If you look at what's going on in the world right now, the main problem with the world, according to a certain group of people, is CO2. We have too much CO2. And the other phenomena in the world today is the prevalence towards abortions. Not so much that there are cases when it's appropriate, I guess. I mean, but it's actually become like a fashion accessory. It's become like something which means nothing, actually. It's become like something, it's a choice. Like, it's just like, I choose to get pregnant and have an abortion. This is normal, you know, when it's absolutely abnormal. It's absolutely the most devastating situation. I'm not saying that there aren't situations when it, you know, I understand, and I think it's highly unfair that the woman is lumbered with this situation. You know, it's very difficult to be pregnant and barefoot and all that. I got all that. But this is supposed to be, this is a very, you know, and there seems to be a death cult operating. And this death cult is promoting, you know, this CO2 is bad and we have to reduce our carbon footprint when we are carbon-based beings. We are carbon-based beings and we should reduce carbon. Okay. And we should kill ourselves when we're at a very young age. It's a very good thing. And this seems to be the color of society at the moment. I think if we're going to be realistic, Buteyko said that when the average control pause comes to 15, society doesn't function. We're here now. And I think, I'm sorry to say, but it looks to me like, I don't know how many million, 50, 100, 200, 300 are going to die. They are, I think. It looks like that to me, because they are using these injections, and these injections will poison people and destroy their immune system. I saw a scientist at the Crick Institute, which is making the vaccines for Pfizer. And this particular scientist there, big fat guy, was interviewed, and he said, he was describing the immune system and said, no, this vaccine will take off 6 or 8% of these T cells, and and if you have enough of them, you'll wipe your immune system out completely. And he's pro-vaccine, working at the Crick Institute, making the vaccines. It came from his mouth, not a critic. So they are just trying to destroy the immune system of the. I think the people dying suddenly of anaphylactic shock and heart attacks and stroke, I think they're unintended. I don't think they intended that to happen. I think they wanted to do it another way. There is a death cult, it seems. And they wanted people to die of weakened immunity. That was the idea, you know, because like that's the world we're in. And now, as Buteyko said, control pause hits 15, that's it. And now we're living it as we see on our televisions, and as you see what are the announcements being made and the things happening in the world.
So I mean, the point really is that with Buteyko method, if you realize this and you've got some sense of what's going on and you want to turn it around, there is a possibility to do that. You can learn the method and turn your health around, which is what we've done.
So many important points that you're making. Since we are talking, this wasn't planned, but since we are talking about birth, and we are touching on abortion. Does any one of you have a perspective on the effects of abortion into the mother's psychology? I am definitely not someone who knows about this, but I have had some interest, and what I've seen is that the effects are very deep, very traumatizing psychologically. Does any one of you have a view on this? Irene, see.
Yes, I've experienced many family constellations, which is a kind of psychological representation of systems, of family systems. And in this theory and practice, observation, I would say, it's not a theory, it's an observation of how a system works. It seems that every aborted child, and as everyone in a family who is not honored, even if he's alive or dead, honored means recognized of his existence or her existence and of the value. It remains there, a source of attention.
It's a loss.
It's a loss, yes, yes. And whenever the parents or the system recognizes this aborted child, let's say, everyone feels more peaceful, everyone feels more calm. And when in my practice I've seen women who had abortions, I always bring that in their consciousness. I mean, I discuss a little bit about, we have to recognize this child. It was not born, maybe had some days of living, but it was here for some moments. And they always have a big emotional response, like they cry or they feel like something is orderly put afterwards, like things take the correct place in their heart somehow.
My mother knew somebody that lost a child. They were like girlfriends. They were the same age or similar age. And my mother once said that when this friend of hers lost this child, it was very tragic and all this kind of stuff. But for years and years later, she still referred to that child by its name. She'd say, oh yeah, that was after I lost, I think she called him Peter or something. That was before I lost Peter. Or that was after I lost Peter. It was a memory with her that there was someone there. And no one else knew this child. She did. She had a connection to it. It didn't come out into the world yet, but she knew it somehow.
Of course, we are deeply connected with kids when they're in the womb. I mean, it's how it is from early on. Around 3 months, it's more and more. Before 3 months, it's a little bit like it's not rooted yet. But after 3 months, it becomes a part of the family somehow. And it's really different if a woman loses a child by a problem of the child or a problem of the mother. Grief is of a different kind.
Miscarriage.
Or miscarriage, yes. It's not so loaded as they observe in family constellations.
Deliberate decision, that's different. Yeah.
There is a scientific thing, to my knowledge, okay, that you see woman has connection after conceiving with baby, right? That's why was philosophical discussion back in old days where baby does exist, where, and that's why they chosen, okay, 3 months or whatever. But it's not real, because in reality, woman has connection, pregnant woman, just when we see it was conceived.
Well, that was my experience. That was what I was trying to say, is that I knew immediately I conceived.
That's very interesting.
It is a big problem for pregnant women, for sure. I'm talking about abortion, yes. They get rid of something what already alive. Difficult to see, okay, no brain, because what they see found after arguing, brain, you see, is developed end of 3 months, whatever, 7 weeks, right? Before, there is no brain, nobody, okay, nothing you see, nobody exists. What they see came to conclusion, but it's not right.
The fact that something has not taken shape doesn't mean anything, because the concept of potential, so if you start listening to a symphony of Mozart and you know it well, you know how it is from beginning to end. If you know that a child has been conceived, you know where it's going. It's that particular symphony. There's nothing different. I mean, of course, many things can happen and the woman can get sick or even, but if the symphony is completed, you know how it goes from beginning to end. And if you know it well, you know it's a whole thing in and of itself and it's perfect. Yeah. So the moment you have conceived, the potential of that's a human being. The same way as if you hear the first notes of that symphony, that's that symphony. I think that's something to consider. I don't know how we could connect this with Buteyko, right? But it's interesting in and of itself, right?
It is, yes. I don't know if someone hears about this conversation. Maybe they would think, oh, they're for against abortions or for keeping the babies, irrelevant of the circumstances. The truth is sometimes the family or the support of a woman makes it impossible for such a thing to happen. So I'm not critical about a woman taking this, having this choice. There are many, many complex situations that this may be necessary.
But if you understand you've made the decision and that you're prepared to go through with the process, then it's not harmful in the same, because you're doing it consciously. But if it's just like a right or you're entitled to it, that's a completely different thing. I think that's too very flippant.
It's interesting what you're mentioning now. The way to connect this with Buteyko perhaps will be to this. We already spoke about it in the third podcast about family life, yeah, and the resourcefulness that Buteyko gives you through your health and your well-being in order to be able to perhaps, because we're not making a moral judgment on anyone who might have done this, yeah, and what we're talking about specifically now. Abortion, but it could be anything else. Yeah, we also spoke about divorce, for example. But it's about giving the message that the Buteyko method gives you resourcefulness in all areas, and it tends to give you space to make better decisions. Yeah, so this is the key point.
That comes from the diseases of civilization. Mm-hmm. Civilization. What is civilization? People think of civilization as fine architecture, ballet, classical music, and good food. That's not civilization. Civilization is the organization. It is structure, where everyone goes to work at the same time, everyone wakes up at the same time, breakfast, lunch, dinner, so you can organize schools, so you can, there's no, natural, organic moving around. You live in a tent or something with your family, and somebody hunts and someone gathers and someone gets water, and everyone's got things to do. If you're living in a civilized world, then it's different. And the synchronization is the key. As soon as people are synchronized, now you've got pyramids. Now you've got architecture. Now you've got these things. While they are so-called not synchronized, everyone's running around the place looking for food.
That idea, that nomadic thing, but the other end of the extreme, a bit sad to see, is that the number of people who put themselves in the role of carer and will not practice because they say they have too many obligations and they can't see that this strength and ability to be of greater service will come from temporarily directing this attention to their own health.
Yes, of course.
Well, this happens a lot with mothers.
It does.
Can I ask a question, Javier? Or rather, you've mentioned at some point that the earlier a child learns a skill, the greater their chances of success, be it the piano or correct breathing or whatever. And it is interesting how quickly a child picks up language it hears their parents use. And the parents seem to forget that if it picks up their bad language with relish, it will equally do so with their good language. The child is good at copying. So, if the parents are going to go around deep breathing with their mouths open, the child is going to pick up this damaging habit. And so if the parents know the method and can instill good habits in the child, there really is some hope for future generations.
The takeaway of the podcast is like for any parent who wants their children to be healthy, it will be parallel to, you know, a mother or a father who wants to teach their children the same skills that they have probably acquired. Let's say, for example, they're musicians. It will be really understandable that the parents want the kids to learn music. They probably wouldn't wait until they are teenagers or they have the capacity to make their own rational decisions to start playing piano, because everybody knows that the earlier you start, the better. So you will encourage your children to start playing piano to see if it's something that, you know, they could like or not at 5, 6, 7. And the same applies for the breathing. The parents should learn it and teach it to the children, because the earlier they start, the better, as with everything else. As for the Buteyko method in general, go to the real classical Buteyko practitioners on this website, learnbuteykoonline.net, where you can see plenty of testimonials, also in the YouTube channel. And you can sign up for free for introductions to the method, where you can ask your questions to the practitioners, giving those fantastic webinars where they're very generous with their time, with their knowledge. And also you have Buteyko in other languages. You have it in Greek, you have it in Spanish, you have it in Hebrew and more. If anything, find out more about this method. This could really make a great difference in your life. And I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and we'll hear you in the next one. Thank you very much to all of you. Again, it's really, really great.